It's so difficult for the mind to consider that there are other realities that are available to us when the surface of our lives is so incredibly loud and out of sync. Think of the ocean during a massive storm. The surface is filled with violent waves, blinding rain, and total chaos. And if you look only at the surface, you'd think the whole world is getting ready to fall apart. But if you drop just a few feet below that surface, the stillness increases. It's a deep, unshakable quiet, and right now humanity is caught entirely on the surface. We're reacting to the waves, the endless waves of corruption, fear, and division. But the shift we're talking about isn't about calming the storm out there. It's about considering engaging in a paradigm shift that moves toward center, away from the waves, away from the periphery, away from the surface, and into the depths.
Welcome to Becoming You, where we apply spiritual truth and wisdom to your everyday life. I'm Terry Hasty.
And I'm Haydn Hasty. And in this episode, we're taking a conversation about the current state of the world and our role in it to a deeper level by considering a shift to a different paradigm.
As we've talked about, Haydn, human nature itself, all of us, we're going through massive growing pains. Our old way of living that has been built on competition and achievement and kind of this rigid framework of us versus them, of these group identities, that's maxed out. It's breaking down. But the chaos we're seeing isn't really the end of the world. Another way to look at it is it's the painful birth of a completely new way of being human. The real question is, how and where do we even begin?
Well, anytime you face a new beginning, it's like walking into a classroom for a subject that you've never had. You have a certain amount of nervousness about the situation. You know, you're going to have to learn new skills, a different language, and a new way of looking at things. And Terry, that's exactly it's the challenge that you and I have faced and continue to face while developing this work in consciousness that we began about 15 years ago.
I know, I remember, Hayden, when we first started teaching emotional intelligence, people would look at us and literally ask, what do emotions and intelligence have to do with each other? It felt to many people like a completely foreign paradigm back then.
Well, today it's a household concept, and we did find the language to express it. Our
That's
work
true.
became the foundation of the middle and senior leader programs for the USDA Forest Service. But this work in consciousness, we're right back at the edge of the unknown again. We think in a linear fashion, especially when it comes to our lives and how we're supposed to live our lives. But we need to take some time to build a common language here to bring some clarity to what we actually mean by this paradigm shift and the role of consciousness that is involved in it. So to do that, let's create a new window. Just call it the four panes of a paradigm shift. And so let's start with the top left pane. We'll call that number one. And this is governed by this main concept that the mind can only lead to a relativistic perception.
In other words, the mind can only see from its own perspective where you are standing.
Exactly. I mean, that's the nature of this has been spoken about since the beginning of time, of the great illusion. 10 people can look at the exact same event, come up with 10 completely different descriptions, and every single one of them will believe that their version is absolute truth. And this is where humanity is stuck today in the relativity. When relativity becomes our only reality, which is what has happened, then the absolute laws that govern human existence lose their validity. Take the statement, for example, all men are created equal. That's not an opinion, it's a cosmic truth. If the source, whatever it is you want to call it, God, the divine, the infinite, if the source is the origin of the many, then it means that we are all inherently equal to the source. But in a purely relativistic world, an absolute law like that gets pushed aside. It's ignored, it's maligned, it's forgotten.
Because without a fixed point of observation that's consistent, everything just depends on where you're standing and what you want to see or what you've been taught or what you expect to see. And it becomes really difficult, if not impossible, to separate objective observation from subjective opinion or just, my vantage point.
Well, what you said about, I think you said without a fixed point of observation. Here's part of the key. As matter of fact, it's a central key, which is a fixed point of observation, at least in a relativistic world, assumes that that fixed point is outside of you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And this new paradigm that is taking place is not about that. It is about what is inside of you. So, with that understanding of, for example, not having a fixed point of observation, then the implications are clear. We're going to stay stuck, and we're spinning around in the circling tracks of the mind, just trapped out here on the periphery in this horizontal plane, completely unaware that we're even stuck, or let alone realizing how we got here
Or how to get out.
or how to get out. And that's why we struggle to find happiness, fulfillment, or any real way to transcend the limitations and barriers that we face in today's world.
So let's move from that window pane to the upper right window pane. And now we see the words not knowing how to become happy, inertia is created.
Well, that's huge. And the word inertia, I think, is really correct. You might be moving constantly. I mean, we're all busy, but it doesn't mean you're actually going anywhere. You come home exhausted at the end of the day, but it's just it's being trapped on the treadmill, or it's being eaten up in the rat race.
And we keep making the same mistakes over and over, or just keep doing things the same way, not necessarily mistakes, but like you said, not really getting anywhere.
Well, we've all been there, where stress and fear become so chronic and habitual that we just, we say to ourselves, well, that's the way life is. That's just part of life, we say. But it's not true.
Well, it's a dangerous practice in which we normalize being stressed out. We normalize this feeling of anxiety. And here's the equation of the old paradigm, the one we're trying to shift away from. Mind equals relativity, and relativity eventually equals despair or inertia, as we were saying before. We're not designed to be isolated, separate little points floating through a meaningless universe. But when the mind tells us that we're separate, it really becomes a not only deeply lonely, but an agonizing experience because it's not how it's meant to be.
Well, the mind, and what you said, which is so true, relativity eventually results in breakdown. I mean, it's unavoidable because of how it operates.
Because I can't maintain that all by myself, everything, that point of view that I have.
No, and neither are others going to allow you to maintain it. You will be attacked.
True.
You will be made out to be wrong, etc., etc. But that psychological tension just keeps building. The chronic fear and stress eventually manifest in the individual's life as illness or burnout, addiction, dysfunction of a million different kinds. And so this natural flow of life gets blocked, and stagnation sets in, but it doesn't make any difference. Still inside of you, there's that burning desire to live a fulfilled and happy life, to somehow figure out how to transcend those barriers that have you imprisoned.
because stagnation might set in, but we all know that nothing stays the same. Everything's in motion. So in spite of all the collective and all of the personal pain that the human spirit experiences, it simultaneously keeps trying to figure out how to be happy, how to improve our lives. The problem is most of our kind of quick fix release mechanisms from the stress and fear and anxiety really don't serve evolution. It's not a conscious practice. We turn to things like substances, or we're chasing money, or losing ourselves in what we call hyper realities, like obsessive entertainment or sports or social media or even constant travel. It's not that any of these things are inherently bad. It's just that we use them as anesthesia or distraction, as a substitute for the real conscious evolutionary purpose that we could use them for which they're meant.
Every single human being is in their own way imprisoned in their mind. It is unavoidable. And we become essentially just kind of comfortable and satisfied in this knot, this KNOT of incomplete being. And like I said, you just get comfortable with it. You say, well, that's the way life is. That's the way it is. And one day it will change.
And even though it's often uncomfortable, in that kind of comfortable place of, well, at least I know what this is, then our connection to a higher destiny gets not, well, it gets severed. And at the best, it just gets pushed down or ignored. Relativity, which is the highest peak that the mind can ever reach, becomes our reality. But ultimately, relativity, as we've said, only produces despair, inertia, and stagnation.
We're sitting here talking about this. I'm already starting to feel depressed.
I need a Pepsi.
Just, but it's true to come to understand that this is really how the mind functions. Now, there are other realities and other levels of development that are available to each one of us, as how the mind can begin this climb out into a higher realm. But we're going to have to know something different than what we currently know. But let's keep moving forward and let's look for a way out. And so now let's go down to the bottom left. This is window pane number 3, right?
Right.
And, okay. So in this window pane, what we want to be aware of is that the results of your observation of the object outside of you, which it could be a person or a situation or anything, is dependent upon how you are looking at it.
Right. This is where everything changes. So, in the physical world, everything is bound by laws of relativity. Everything's measured by the speed of light. That's the absolute limit of our material universe. And the material world is where we store and create and encounter what we call our J-bobs, our judgments, beliefs, opinions, perceptions, prejudices, and positions.
Basically, that's the content of the mind, the J-Bob system. We can do it by replacing these circling tracks of the mind with spiritual realization or true wisdom, which means going beyond the intellect. And this is what is happening in this paradigm shift. We are being forced to turn inward toward the center where you pick up speed and away from the noisy linear arrangement, the periphery of your everyday life, where everything goes so slowly. The inner governs the outer, and it is with the inner that you find, and I'm using the term loosely, speed in order to transcend the content of the mind.
So we have to interrupt those circling tracks and say, oh, that's just how life is. That's just the way it goes. That's just how those people are, those kinds of things. Not just with more noise and judgments and opinions, but with wisdom. And I find that to be profound, Hayden. It means It's the content of our minds, actually, that's keeping us in prison. It's not life, it's not our external experiences or circumstances. We are truly the unconscious creators of our life, including our own sadness, our own sorrow, our own despair. And the very thing we're depressed about is the reality that we're accidentally or unconsciously that we've built. We've become our own worst enemy in that way.
It's the weirdest thing that once you realize that you're the one that built the prison that you are imprisoned in, then you realize simultaneously that you also hold the key to get out. And
That's the
that's
good
what
news.
that's the good news.
Yeah.
That's what this is about, which is you are not imprisoned at all. But it can feel that way living out on the periphery and just being hammered in everyday life by all of this stuff that is happening outside of us. And so, to help you do that, we've created a relaxation exercise that's included in this episode. We call it QCPS, quiet, calm, peace, and silence. QCPS, that I hope you'll enjoy.
This is one of my favorite things that you've ever created, Hayden. It's not just because I love your voice, which I do, but because it's such a wonderful practice to interrupt those circling tracks. It's a 20-minute relaxation, and it's a 20-minute relaxation and consciousness exercise, and it really does give you the space and the direction to slow down the mind and shift your perception into a much deeper sense of relaxation, but also a deeper observer state. And as Hayden said, you can find out, you can access it through the show notes.
Well, in an exercise like this is where we can move from essentially using the term observer to the witness. You're just witnessing everything taking place. But we've included it alongside this episode, and we highly encourage you to take the time to listen to it and enjoy it. It's how we begin to make this shift. We have to engage in the work. We have to begin to practicalize wisdom, which is really what consciousness is. Consciousness is wisdom applied, not the voices in your head, not all of that content in your mind, but applying the wisdom that consciousness reveals to each one of us.
And this brings us to the fourth pane, the last one in the bottom right. In this space, you might see the words create a foundation of aspiration and concentration.
This pane is really all about taking action and creating a path of integration for your learning. For any kind of real transformation to be sustainable, you have to be the one to organize it, to direct it, and undertake the learning that you have chosen, to embrace the path that you have chosen. Your freedom, your fulfillment, and the ultimate purpose. And fulfilling that purpose of your life, it isn't just going to automatically drop in your lap, and it's not going to come in the mail. It is something that will be revealed to you as you engage in this practice.
I wish it did. I wish there was like a certification process or a diploma I could get. But as you said, we have to do the work. We often say that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we still have to develop that spirituality, just like your muscles or playing the piano. These deeper consciousness skills have to be practiced before they can be applied and lived out in your life. And that's what this fourth pane is about. We already know what doesn't work, the old paradigm of relativity and separation. Now we have to discover what does work.
Well, that's also going to require learning to see the world through a unified lens rather than a divided one, or to be specific, rather than a relativistic one. Think of the ancient paradox: the way up and the way down are the exact same path. And it's true. Failure and success are not really opposites. They are both vital parts of the exact same process. And what you think is often like success, you say, well, that's wonderful. Now it'll be a lot of fun. Lots of times it's not once you become successful. So, hidden within these dynamics are the very things that you need to learn in order to transcend your old mind.
And most successes are preceded by some failures along the way. And of course, we all have had that in our own lives. When you step into unity consciousness, you realize that the negative and positive, the tackles and the touchdowns, are actually conspiring together to serve your evolution. It's really only when you can see this, see life from this perspective, that you stop resisting and railing against the negative and you start using it as a tool for transformation in your life.
Well, it completely redefines the mind's job description, so to speak. The true purpose of the mind is not to create truth because it can't. Its job, its real job, is to organize truth and wisdom that is outside of itself and then to have the courage to live out of that truth. And that's a very different way of using your mind and is part of this new paradigm shift that we are all involved in.
Hey, and that part really resonates with me because my mind can't come up with the truth because the truth exists outside of my mind. It's not relative to my experiences and my beliefs and my opinions. And through these new realizations, the entire purpose, the flavor and experience of your life is going to fundamentally change. It's the new paradigm. Welcome to the new paradigm of unity.
Well, with this understanding of relativity and the suffering and the pain that it creates that we can see so clearly today in the world, we can truly, finally, at last, begin this climb. We can begin to start making a shift to a much greater reality because here's the ultimate truth. Consciousness is the primary fabric of all reality, not matter, not opinion. Matter is simply the densest, most unconscious expression of a supreme defined consciousness, a consciousness that lies dormant within matter itself and uses the evolutionary process as the mechanism by which it wakes up. Our current the scientific worldview tries to use logic and reasoning to map the universe through things like relativity and quantum mechanics, string theory. There are a lot of things out there, but those are all, and I'm not a scientist, so be careful about listening to my comment about this, but those are all horizontal measurements that are based upon observation, and that's why a unified field theory has never been able to be created because it is based upon a fixed object of perception, which always results in relativity. You can measure the physical world for the rest of your life, and you are never going to find the purpose of your existence and the reason you took birth.
Well, because your purpose doesn't live in the material world. It's like the marriage vows. They're all horizontal, for better, for worse, and sickness and health, for richer, for poor, as if we could measure those things. But I haven't met anybody who would measure their marriage by those kind of physical, material parameters. The true purpose of life or relationships or work resides in a supramental consciousness. It's a plane of existence where knowledge isn't um, achieved or obtained by observing something like a truth from the outside, or even by observing a marriage from the outside. It's attained by becoming it. It's not about observing things from a point of relativity. It's by becoming that which you are here to become. And this is what our online community, the Becoming You journey, is all about. We become all kinds of things unconsciously. This is a powerful way to join a community of others seeking to live consciously, to live an authentic, powerful life. And you can learn all about it at our website, becomingyoujourney.com. And also, it's referenced in our show notes.
You can't put the feeling of love under a microscope. A neurologist can track the electrical firing of your neurons, and those are the mechanics, that's the horizontal, measurable, linear stuff, but they can never observe your actual lived experience of those neurons firing.
One of our grandsons was just with us for the weekend, and he shared that he had his first kiss a week ago. And I could tell from the expression on his face that his experience of it was immeasurable. And that's the same with consciousness. But because science cannot isolate consciousness in a test tube or put parameters on it, it treats it as an accidental byproduct of our complex brains. It's like a glitch in the machinery. In essence, the old paradigm says if we can't measure it, it must be an anomaly. And they use their own relative data and opinions to prove it. But of course, it doesn't any more than you can measure the bliss of a kiss, right?
Well, see, for example, if you go back to the movie Couples Retreat, I can't remember which couple it was, when they're in the scan. Yeah, but tell me, how do we compare to other couples? Are we good? That's that horizontal, measurable, observable approach that always ends in failure. It can get part of it right, but that's that relative part. The brain cannot produce consciousness, plain and simple. But consciousness can use the brain and can use the mind. And this is the paradigm that we are beginning the shift toward. It is the movement from the relative to the subjective, from self-awareness to consciousness, which is really just another way of saying that we're shifting from observing life to becoming life. It's not about doing, it's about being, because your doing comes from your being. So the primary tool that we have chosen in our work to help you participate in this shift is essentially transformation through spiritual realization. That is the entire purpose behind our work and this podcast.
I'm so glad you shared that, Haydn, because the mind is actually just a secondary faculty. It's an instrument of formulation and execution, but it's not an instrument of direct knowledge or spiritual realization. Left to itself, the mind can only create a relative, opinionated observation of any given situation or person. And you know that's true because it can all change tomorrow. The opinions that you have today can be completely different tomorrow.
This suffering that we are all witness to in the world today can only serve us well if we truly understand its purpose. Instead of just numbing ourselves with the temporary release mechanisms that we spoke of earlier of addiction or condemnation, etc., we are being forced to grow. And that shift is the movement from the outer to the inner.
So together we're building a bridge here from the crisis, literally, of relativity, where everything feels fragmented and meaningless, to the certainty of the spirit, where truth is found by turning inward and claiming your true identity.
Identity through knowledge. You know a thing because you are that thing. And that's a very different way of learning and beginning to organize, direct, and embrace this learning that we're all being exposed to today. When you decide that it's time and you're sick and tired of suffering and living in these circling tracks of the mind, and you begin to choose to learn about these truths, I promise you, I give you my word, a path will form and shape, and your life will change forever.
And Hayden and I, we're not here to change you or fix you in any way. We're here to help you remember as we're remembering the truth of who you've always been.
Well, I'll take what you just said. It is not about fixing anything. It is about remembering the truth of who we are that came with us in our birth and existence in this world.
Because there's nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with you, and I know that sounds heretical, and it's perfectly okay to argue against that. But underneath all that noise, underneath all of the mental chaos and anguish in your mind, underneath all of that is the truth of who and what you are. And that is what all of us, each one of us, is seeking, trying to find.
The paradigm shift in which we are all involved is underway. It's actually taking place right now. And we're moving from doing to being, from just thinking about it to becoming it, and from the physical understanding to a spiritual understanding of our lives.